All right, we're rolling. Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalitions. Glad to see everybody again. We have, I'm not going to say special guest. I say that every single time. Then I get to laughing because they're all very special. So we have with us today Jeff. Okay, so I asked him before we began, how should I address you? Because Jeff Struecker, you've been many things or held many titles. So why don't you introduce yourself and give us the rundown here? Maybe that's the way to start.
I'm just going to call myself a regular guest since you had so many special guests on the show. I'm just a regular guest.
Humility suits you. Go ahead, man. That works.
I am a guy who did a lot of time. I spent 23 years in the Army, most of it in special operations. I was in the big fight in Somalia, and there's an actor who plays me in the movie Black Hawk Down. After that, I went to school and started a church, and I had the honor of leading a church outside of one of America's largest military bases. So it's entirely full of gun-toting, patriotic people every week.
I like it. Okay, so that's a very quick rundown. You seem polished, like you've talked about this a few times.
I've had a chance a time or two.
I'm glad to hear that. Fantastic. So just so everybody knows, in full disclosure, Jeff's going to be our featured speaker at IFC's 2A Day this year, and you'll find that at the Iowa Capitol on February 18th. All the information that you're going to need is on iowafc.org, and you can hit the tab or the pull down tabs and navigate to the events. And you'll see that he's going to be with us 2 different times on February 18th. So open to everybody at the Iowa Capitol. He's going to be our featured speaker on stage there as we go through and address people regarding the Second Amendment, how important it is, and a rundown through many bills that we'll be working on and things that we'll be tracking at that time. So that'll be fantastic. Now, keep in mind, folks, look at the events on those pages and read down through the descriptions. There's a map there to show you the best place to park. And myself and another person are going to volunteer to run a shuttle bus that day. So when it's cold out and it's nasty, you park in that parking lot, and we'll get you back and forth to the front door, warm, safe, and sound. So you don't have to take the Baton Death March through the cold to get there, all right? So keep that in mind. We want to have you come out that day and support us and support Jeff. And most importantly, show the legislature that you care about these things. You being there and being engaged makes all the difference. So that's February 18th, 2025. And then that night, if you want to buy tickets out in Altoona, we're going to have a smaller, more intimate affair, which is our pack supper. So it's a really great spread. We're going to have live music. Jeff's going to give a little bit more intimate speech, and you can buy tickets for that. We'd love to fill that venue. So keep in mind those 2 things are on the way. So with that, Jeff, why don't we go into, would you be willing to share with us what led you to join the Army and some of the circumstances? Because I don't think everybody knows that you're an Iowa boy.
Yeah, that's right. I was in Fort Dodge, Iowa, when I went to the recruiter's office and signed up. Got on an airplane. I think it was my second airplane ride ever when I flew from Fort Dodge to Des Moines and then off to start basic training. I don't come from a military family, but I do come from a family that's patriotic. And man, I never even really considered the military until I had just turned 18 in my senior year, a few months from graduation, and my high school buddy, Tony, joined the Army without even mentioning it. And then Tony came to school the next day and said, "Hey, Jeff, I just joined up." And that's the first moment that I started thinking about it. I went to a recruiter's office and I asked one simple question. And man, that question changed my life forever. And I basically just asked the recruiters, what's the toughest job in the Army? Because I want to see if I have what it takes. And they steered me towards the Army Rangers. And I spent almost my entire 23 years in the Army with those Rangers. And it forged me. Iowa and the Rangers forged me into the man that I am today.
Wow. That's absolutely fantastic. It's kind of funny that you mention it like that, that you had the wherewithal as a young man to ask, what's the toughest thing that I can do? My family and I were headed to church the other day, and my daughter's 15, son's 11. And I don't remember, honestly, I can't for the life of me recall exactly what it was we were talking about, but there was some mention made of this 2 forks in the road that my daughter was going to choose among, right? And I said, well, you'll need to do this. And my wife immediately says, well, that's much harder. And I just stopped and I said, well, I said, the hardest thing is almost always the right thing. I said, the easy stuff is it comes along from time to time, and we're blessed to have those opportunities. But the truth is, the easy stuff on the fork in the road is usually the wrong stuff. So I turned around the seat and I looked at my daughter and I said, I think what you know what you need to do. And so that's what she went and did that day. And I was really glad. But it's almost a metaphor, Jeff, for most of the things that we see in our life. The tough stuff is usually better.
Yeah, I don't know if it's better as much as while you're going through it. Most people, when they're going through the tough stuff, they wish they took the easy fork in the road. But if you were thinking about or quoting that Robert Frost poem, taking the path less traveled, the road less traveled, has made all of the difference. And I think it's when you get miles down that hard path, miles down that less traveled road, that starts to impact you deeply at the heart and soul level. And that's when it becomes obviously the right decision. Probably didn't feel good at the time, but now that you're going down that road, man, a lot of things start to change inside of you. And almost always, I don't always take the hard path, but I never avoid the hard path. If it's the right path to take, then I'm going to take it no matter how hard the path is.
Yeah, this is in line with a conversation I had with an interview with Kim Rode. Have you heard of her by chance? 6-time Olympian skeet shooter, very famous lady, hard worker. I mean, we're talking about a person who started practicing as a potential Olympian, I think at age 10 or 11.
Nice.
Very dedicated. And mention was made of the same kind of thing with her. I don't remember exactly what it was, but along the lines of the pathway that you take makes all the difference in life. It may not necessarily be the journey that the destination you're looking at, but that pathway, what you do and how you do it makes all the difference. So when somebody says to you, the ends justify the means, I'll usually think to myself, well, that's probably a cruel statement, whether they realize it or not, because how you get there matters.
Right. Totally agree.
So tell us what, now with your time as a Ranger, you had what? Top Ranger accolades and a few other things?
Yeah. So I spent my first 10 years in the Army in the Rangers, left and went away, went to school, came back in the Army, had a short break in the Army, and then came back in the Army as a chaplain. So I was an enlisted guy for more than half of my career, and then came back in and finished out the last 10 years of my time in the Army as an Army chaplain.
Okay.
But during that time, I had a chance to compete in the Army's Best Ranger competition. And this is, by all measures, if you look at the scales out there worldwide, this is one of the toughest, usually top 3 toughest competitions in the world, endurance competitions. And I tried it a couple of years in a row, came in 4th place, 2 years back to back, and thought, well, I did my best. 4th is about as good as it's ever going to get. Now, more than half of the teams that start this thing, and these are some of the toughest guys in the military, more than half of the teams that start don't finish.
Okay.
So last minute on year 3, I decided I'm going to give it one more shot. We'll see where it goes from there. And it is a competition with a 2-person team. My partner and I won that year. And man, honestly, most of the reason we won is because my partner was just unstoppable. And for most of the 60 hours straight, I was just hanging on for dear life.
Okay, 60 hours. Give us an idea when you talk about endurance.
Yeah, so
some people may think
it's hard for me to explain this. Thanks for asking. It's hard for me to explain this to people that don't really understand what we're talking about. You take the average ultra endurance competition, and this one would rank far more difficult. So over the course of those 60 hours, you're typically going to move somewhere around 100 miles with a heavy load on your back. You'll do many, many different shooting events over the course of those 2.5 days. And by that, I mean machine guns, pistols, shotguns, rifles, and multiple different iterations of that. You're going to do some very technical events, but the technical events are always on the second day. There's no stop, there's no sleep, and food is strictly controlled. You only can eat the meals that are given to you, which means you can't really bulk up during the thing. But the reason why the highly technical events are on the second day is because at this point, your hands are numb from all of the exercise. You're already tired. You're already, low on sleep and physically exhausted. And then we start throwing very highly technical military tasks at you. And then on the third day, it's typically an obstacle course, a water confidence course, which is like an obstacle course in the water, and then a couple of more runs. Usually for years, the start of the third day, remember, there's no sleep for the entire 3 days. The start of the third day began with a Spartan race. And the Spartan race was a big race for the community, but they would let the best Ranger competition, the competitors, go through it first. And they would blow through the Spartan race faster than people who have been training for it for a year. But as soon as the Spartan race was over with, they would go to the next event and the next event and the next event. So if you want to know what the best Ranger competition is like, just picture a Spartan race that lasts for 60 hours and covers 100 miles.
I got to tell you, I'm tired just from thinking about it.
It is no joke.
Wow. Well, fantastic. That's unbelievable. It's hard for people to fathom. It's hard for me to fathom 60 hours without sleep, and then being under constant strain, and then being tasked with complex duties and things to decipher, and having to use critical thinking skills rather than just rudimentary ideas,
And then, Michael, add to that you're going to have to shoot, and you're going to have to be incredibly precise with a weapon that is not your own, and you got a couple of minutes to get ready for it, and you're being timed, and get ready to go while you're already tired and exhausted and all of those things. So it's kind of the ultimate military competition.
Fantastic.
It's not just the Army, by the way. It's all branches of the U.S. military, and people from around the world will come try it.
I didn't know that. I thought this was an Army only thing.
No, but it showcases just how incredible. The reason I love this thing is not because of my time doing it. It's because it showcases to the world just how incredible our military is. When you see what those folks can do, people stand back and scratch their heads and say, I don't even understand how that's possible.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
they're unbelievable. Very, very cool. Thank you. Now, I've got to ask, this doesn't have anything directly to do with anything with the Rangers that I would know about, but at what point did you find and marry?
I married my high school sweetheart. We met in Fort Dodge. Anybody who's listening to this from Fort Dodge knows that there's two high schools, Fort Dodge Senior High and St. Edmunds High School. And she went to St. Edmunds. I went to Fort Dodge Senior High. We met working at Burger King while I was a senior in high school, and we fell head over heels for each other, and had a little bit of a long distance relationship when I first joined the Army. But we're still married 33 years later.
Fantastic. I like that. That's great. All right. So let us have an idea as you progress through your time in the Army. At what point in this timeline did you start deploying, and what were those things like for you?
So for people that are not familiar with the Army, with the military, or with special operations, I spent almost my entire career in special operations. And in special operations, you can be deployed literally on a moment's notice. Typically, the United States Special Operations Forces can be anywhere in the world in less than 10 hours, which means that includes a plane ride. So I spent most of my life on a very short leash, meaning I had a notification system on me, and anytime this thing went off, I had to drop everything, leave my family hanging, go straight to work. And I started preparing for my first combat tour a couple of years into the Army. I was already a sergeant in the Ranger Regiment by this time. I went to Panama, the invasion of Panama in 1989. By the way, Christmas Eve in Panama, 1989, I'm on a hillside on an airfield that we just took over way up by the border of Costa Rica. And I noticed that there's a working phone in the control tower of the airport. So I make a phone call home to Fort Dodge, Iowa, from a control tower, from a combat zone, on an airfield on a desert strip a deserted airfield in Panama, for my first time in combat.
Not bad, not bad. It was that allowed, or
no, of course not. But I mean, you got a soldier, you got a phone, you got a fiance back home. Of course, I'm going to make a phone call back.
Yeah, there you
go. I came back, and my second combat tour was shortly after that. I went to Kuwait as part of Operation Desert Storm, again with the Rangers. So a couple of years later, stayed around with the Rangers. And by this time, I'm a pretty senior guy, pretty senior sergeant. And by then, we were training for another mission somewhere else in the world when I got pulled out of that training cycle and sent over to Somalia with a very, very small surgical force from special operations, all branches of the military. And we were the force that got into the fight that became known as Black Hawk Down. When I'm in Somalia, I'm 24 years old, and I'm already a pretty senior guy with a lot of combat experience. There's an actor who plays me in the movie Black Hawk Down, as I said, and the guys who depicted us, I really think they did this battle justice. Now, the movie is extremely violent, but it's not even close to the real thing. The real battle was so violent that audiences would vomit in their seats if they watched the real violence. But man, they did a great job trying to depict what happened to us in Somalia.
I don't remember the book writer. What was his name?
Mark Bowden.
You think that he did a very fair job?
Yeah, man, he nailed the story. I mean, he was really careful not to try to put a political slant on it, but to just tell you this is what happened. You decide what you think about what happened. I came back. I stayed with the Army. As I said, I had a break in the military while I went to school. But then I finished my education, became an Army chaplain, and I was serving back on active duty before the attacks on September 11, 2001. And then I went 9 times to Afghanistan and 5 times to Iraq before retiring from the Army. And at this point now, I have 17 combat tours in 5 wars on 3 continents.
That's a little bit of travel. Now, so your time post 9/11, what were those duties? Were primarily what?
I was a chaplain with the Army Rangers.
Okay, so what drew you that direction? I'm curious about that, because there's a lot of people who might not understand the idea of a warrior and then a great big crucifix.
I had I had several thousand soldiers ask me this question while I was still in uniform. And basically, they recognized me from Black Hawk Down. Then they saw the uniform and noticed that I had become a chaplain. And they all were saying, what just happened? And I basically tried to explain it to them. I had a profound faith before I ever joined the Army. I had a deep, deep faith while I was in battle in Panama and Desert Storm. But when I was in Somalia, I was 100% sure I was going to die. There were so many bad guys and so few of us. None of us are going to survive. And in spite of being absolutely sure I was going to die, I had total peace about my soul and about where I would spend eternity. And it was so significant that my buddies paid attention to it. And they started asking me a lot of deep spiritual questions. And the moment that I never even considered this until after the big fight in Somalia was over with. But after that battle was over with, I started feeling very strongly that maybe I should spend the rest of my life helping my buddies get strengthen their faith, helping them get ready to meet God one day. That's what set me on the path. This was completely out of the blue. In fact, I came back from Somalia and told my wife this, and she was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I said, I don't either, but I don't think God gives us a vote. We're going to do whatever he tells us to do next. And if that means go become a chaplain, then I guess we're going to do that.
Well, you get what you get what you need, not what you want.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of like the big guy is a disc jockey. You can call in and make requests, but he doesn't necessarily
That's
play
right.
those
You can
tunes.
make
You know?
requests all day long. I'll hear them, but doesn't mean I'm going to play your
Yeah.
requests.
It's interesting that you're talking about being visible among your comrades or among your brothers and sisters, because the truth is that the first thing I think of, and there are many places that obviously qualify, but the first thing I think of is when Jesus is setting everybody down and walks through the Beatitudes. He gives them these eight concepts. You're going to need these. Okay, these are more important than other things, so pay attention. And then he immediately says, "Be salt and light." So they need to be preserved, but they also need to be seen. So that walk that you are offering other people was recognizable to them, and so you can't deny that, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I chased a rabbit.
I totally agree with what you're saying. Yep, completely agree.
Okay, so your time. Do you think I'll ask you the question, and I'm sure you get asked lots of questions, and some of them are probably not that great. Maybe this one isn't, but what did you find the most satisfying? The most satisfying part of your military career? Could you answer that?
Super easy to answer. Without a doubt, it's the people that I worked with.
Okay.
Look, man, I've been retired from the Army now for more than a few years, and the guys and gals that serve in the United States military, they are just far and away more impressive people than the average person in America. And every single guy and gal that I served with are just great Americans, great people, just really impressive people. And every day I got up and went to work, I had to kind of pinch myself like, I can't believe that I get a chance to go work with people like this. I don't even know that I deserve to be in their midst, but man, these guys and gals to this day are my heroes. And think about the privilege of being able to go to work every day. And in my case, some days were 24-hour days for months on end, but to be able to spend every day, all day long, working with your heroes. Well, man, there was a lot of amazing stuff that I saw and did in the military, but by far, number one on my list is the amazing people that I worked with.
Fantastic. It truly is about the people beside you.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you had that kind of experience. I'm really tickled for you.
Thank you.
What else was I going to ask you real quick about military service? I think that we covered some of the things that I want to visit about. The other thing that I don't want to do is I don't want to pull away from what you may be offering people on February 18th when you come out here to Iowa. So I don't want to ask all the questions that are on my mind. In fact, let's do this if you're willing. I want to ask you something that I don't want you to answer now, just to kind of seed
All
with
right.
people and the idea that they need to come in here. So let me craft this question carefully. What practice would you say is chief to filling your faith gas tank, so to speak? What practice or what idea, what thing is it that you have done in order to build a faith that can sustain you? Now, don't answer it, but I want you to see, if you're willing, Jeff. If you're willing to answer that when you come out here in February.
Of course. In fact, I'll give away what I believe are 2 or 3 secrets to, pardon me, to a rock solid faith, no matter what life is throwing at you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so what is it that we haven't covered that you think Iowans need or would want to know about you? Because we want to see them come out and participate. Yeah. We want to listen to what the things that you have to say and consider them. Sure. We want those things to kind of permeate us, to be part of an experience that we share with you. So what is it we need to know in order to prepare for that?
Well, I would just wrap up with telling everybody, look, mark your calendars, save the date, be at the Capitol at 2A Day. I am a guy who is living proof of the importance of the Second Amendment. And honestly, I'm the guy who's been on the business end of the Second Amendment all over the world. And I can tell you, in fact, I will tell you what it looks like if you live in a country where you don't have that right. So we should come out and we should celebrate the Second Amendment. You come out and you should, just be around other guys and gals that feel the same way you do. But I'll give you the opposite side of the coin. I can paint for you a very clear, very real, very ugly picture of what it looks like in a land where that doesn't exist.
That's absolutely huge. It's kind of interesting. I listened to, I can't remember exactly what it was, some quip by Jordan Peterson where he was talking about a given bit of scripture or a circumstance or a current event, and he framed it in the idea where you are always taking the posture of being the hero. Make yourself the villain in this scenario and see what it sounds like, see how you think about it. And I say that to kind of paint the picture. I've traveled abroad and been to many countries now and a few different continents. And I talk with a lot of friends and family, a ton of friends. They've never been outside of the United States. And when they do say, well, I travel abroad all the time. Where? Sandals, Jamaica. I'm like, okay. I don't think that counts. I mean, you're shepherded the whole time, all the way there and back. So go see other cultures and see how these people live. And some of these cultures are really rough. They're very, very tough. Things are really, really poor for people in a lot of places. And I remarked with you before we started recording that I was just listening to one of Jan Michelson's episodes with you, an interview of you back in the day, 2007, I believe it was. And I remember Jan routinely saying, we've been born, we've won the birth lottery.
That's right.
Being born in America
we really have.
In this place. So I think that you're so right when you say other people have it really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
All right. Any parting words before we wrap up?
Of course, I'm looking forward to getting back to my home state, even in February. And there is no more beautiful state capital anywhere in America than the state capital in Des Moines. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there in February.
Yeah, I'm biased. We're biased, but the truth of the matter is it's absolutely unbelievable. I have so many people that I send down there, whether they're state residents or not, and they come back saying it's absolutely breathtaking, and it truly is.
Yep, sure is.
What a great place to hold a 2A rally that day, this 2A day. So, Jeff Struecker, thank you for coming on today. We're looking forward to seeing you soon. I think that's it. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
Take care.
Yes, sir.